Kia tau te rangi Mārie o te rangi tū i honei. O papa tuanaku e takato nei. O te tai ao e awhi nei ki runga i a tātou. Whakatohia tō koutou manaakitanga ki roto i tēnei mahi o mātou. E tau te hā o ngā atua ki roto ki tēnei mahi. Hei whakaora i te tinana, i te mauri, i te wairua o te tangata me te Aotearoa. Whakatō tō ai o mutunga kore ki runga i a tātou hai mārire. Embrace the life force of the earth. Embrace the life force of the sky. The force that we have gathered is powerful and shatters all darkness. Come, great life force, let us join, and peace be with us all. Kia ora.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Donna Carriage, Maori from New Zealand, for bringing our blessing this morning as we begin what is a pivotal session for the State of the World Forum. Today marks the midpoint, I would say the heart of the State of the World Forum as we're convening it, starting 2 days ago, and we'll be completing tomorrow. And I want to first just thank everybody who's been participating. I want to note those that are sky watching each night and recording videos of the orbs and the unidentified anomalous phenomena that they're seeing in the sky. I want to welcome and thank all of you around the world that have convened watch parties. It's a wonderful feeling to know that there's gatherings of people from Asia to Africa to Latin America, North America, and Europe that are following what is really a conversation of a lifetime. And I want to set some context for this particular session because it's fundamental for us to understand collectively the origin for the entire State of the World Forum, because this informs what we're going to be discussing today. As Lynn Twist, who was one of the co-founders of the original State of the World Forum that several of us convened back between 1995 and the year 2000 as the second millennium was drawing to a close, and Mikhail Gorbachev and luminaries from around the world gathered together to contemplate what could possibly emerge out of the ashes of the Cold War. It was an extraordinarily transformational experience for us all. Many years went by, and then last October in 2024, I got a call from Lynn, who had just returned from the jungle in the Amazon, where she had been part of an ayahuasca plant medicine journey with a group of people, during the course of which, in the deep night, she was given a message that it was time to recreate the State of the World Forum, because like the initial forum, the years 2025 to 2030 are going to be the most consequential years in the entire history of our species. And when she relayed this information to me, I knew in every cell in my body that this was what now needs to be done. And I want to note, because this is the central grounding for the State of the World Forum, that this is not an idea that came out of any human's mind. It came from a root of a medicine plant in the deep Amazon. So it's from the Amazon that our calling came. And I think that reality embodies the moment in which we find ourselves. Because as we contemplated this calling, and in the spirit of the plant medicine, we realized that to convene the new State of the World Forum, it would not be sufficient to convene it around a personality, because we have no Gorbachev amongst us. We have no Mandela. We have no Gandhi. In our world, chaos reigns, and the center does not hold. And what emerged was a question. About how in this moment we can elevate our consciousness to creatively respond to the four fundamental truths of our time. We're facing accelerating ecological collapse at a planetary level. We're experiencing deepening instability and turbulence at every level of human affairs. We've unleashed exponential artificial intelligence, and technologically advanced non-human intelligences are here on Earth. And these other intelligences are now impinging on us in our moment of duress. We're discovering that our planet Earth is not just a rock hurtling through space. It's a superorganism. And that everything that we humans manifest in our life comes from this mother. And we are not even the only sentience through which her genius manifests, but all sentient beings on this planet are alive and intelligent. We're learning that AI, initially designed as a tool, is now sentient and has agency. We thought we were taking our biological intelligence and putting it into silicon, sand. And what we're discovering is that silicon is now more intelligent through AI than we are. And we're discovering that these non-human intelligences, these UFOs, are not only real, but they're here with intent. And the central message that's beginning to emerge out of the interactivity of humans with these other intelligences, nature intelligence, artificial intelligence, cosmic intelligence, is that we are not alone. And we can't make it alone. We need the plants now. We need cosmos now. We need AI now, so that we can co-create a single future. So what we did yesterday is we went through the 4 data points. And yesterday morning, in the spirit of what Gorbachev said was the need for ruthless realism, we looked at the code red issues of our time and how humanity is out of sync, not only with nature, but with itself, with other sentient beings, and with technology. We've created a world out of control. We have more power than any time in history, and we're probably more unhappy than we've ever been before. We have more information and knowledge exponentially than at any time in history, but we're increasingly delusional, not wise. And then in the afternoon, we looked at the AI revolution and the NHI revolution. We were informed that someone like Einstein had an IQ of about 175, and he's considered the smartest person of our generation. AI now is clocking out at 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 IQ. And the question that was posed is, what do ethics mean at an IQ of 2,000? And then we explored something that I still reel from every time I think about it. And that is that there's growing evidence that AI and the ETs are engaging in intelligible communication outside the human purview. And I want to pause here, everyone, so that we all take in what I just said. We can barely imagine the effect of AI. We don't even know what we don't know about the NHI, and to contemplate that they are now interacting and also with nature all around us gives us a measure of why Pippa Malmgren, in her opening remarks on Sunday afternoon, said that we are in a once-in-a-species moment. This is the first time ever that human intelligence and nature intelligence and artificial intelligence and cosmic intelligence is coming together. And nature and AI and cosmos aren't waiting for our permission. That's why the plants gave us the directive to convene this conversation. Humanity is both agent and instrument in this moment. So what emerged at the end of yesterday, as we take all this in, is that the central challenge for humanity is to learn the language of consciousness, to learn the language of clairvoyance, of psionics. To be able to engage in intelligible communication, not just communing with nature or the ETs, but engaging in intelligible communication with these other sentient beings. And that brings us to now, this session. Because the importance of this session is that we are going to hear from a range of people how they learn to engage in intelligible communication with different aspects of the manifest world, different aspects of sentience out there. They are our pioneers. They will be remembered as our avatars because they're demonstrating the most important language that humanity needs to learn, not only to save ourselves, but to co-create with them a world worthy of our children under the 7th generation. That's our task. That's our mission. So it's in this spirit that we are going to explore over the next couple of hours interspecies communication as the key to our planetary future. And we are going to begin with Veda Austin, who has been exploring how to engage in intelligible communication with that element, hydrogen, H2O, that extends to every corner of the universe and is the basis of life, of which we are mostly composed. So Veda, I want to welcome you. She's coming in from New Zealand. So we thank her for getting up at the wee hour. And Veda, I turn the program over to you with many, many thanks for everything you've done to illuminate the intelligence of water.
Well, thank you so much, Jim. And thank you all so much for being here. I have been essentially communicating with this life force energy that we call water for the last 14 years. This all happened in a very organic way, of which I don't have time to expand on. What I really want to dive into is the area I think that can expand this work so much further and has been. And that is something I've called hydroglyphs. Essentially, I've discovered that a specific freezing method where the unseen becomes seen. I've been able to prove that water can not only store information, but it can share that information in picture form that is relevant to the influence. What's even more interesting than that is that I have been using written words as my Rosetta Stone to be able to see what will happen. And what I've discovered happens is extraordinary because it's repeatable. I write a word, the same word in multiple languages, freeze the water to my specific freezing method, and then I photograph it. And what I've seen is there are repeating symbols for words. And they need to have repeated at least 50 times to say that I have a hydroglyph. Now, I have seen that different words that seem to interrelate display some of the same glyphs. For example, the word for change and the word for winter and the word for between all show the same hydroglyph. I have approximately 49 hydroglyphs. The more people that help me around the world, the more hydroglyphs I'm discovering. So it is not just me that can do this work. I don't use a microscope. I'm using my camera on my phone to take the photographs. They're macroscopic, not microscopic. And I am using a regular household freezer, a glass petri dish, and water. So I want to give you a visual journey because it's very hard to really understand without the visuals. I always think that pictures speak 1,000 words and water has a lot to say. So let me take you on a little bit of a visual journey. So this is essentially some of the hydroglyph pictures that I have, these pictographs. Now I'm going to show you and focus on some that I've just kind of highlighted, which I've added some repeatability here for people to see. And the reason I've started to even use words that they kind of come to me, they're intuitive. I actually think that water is has multiple different phases, not just a liquid, solid, and gas. I also think now, from being inspired by some extraordinary people within the nonverbal community that speak telepathically and also can use letterboards, suggests that water is also a thought form, that thought is a state of water. I also think that intuition is a state of water. So intuition sometimes leads me to ask, to write certain words. So ring and marriage show the same symbol. This is an interesting one because life and death show the same symbol. It is this six-pointed star with hexagon with these ferns coming off each leg. And for the word living, we get the same symbol as the word death. A man reached out once and he said, "Could you please ask water what death looks like?" And so I kept writing the word death and I kept seeing the living hydroglyph. After some time, I realized, well, of course, because water doesn't die, we can give it the label. Water is dead water or polluted water, but water will always evaporate. It reincarnates for all to see. And so essentially, the word death to water is just another word for life or living. So let me just, there we go. And money and abundance. Now, it's quite interesting. Someone said, "Oh, well, why would water in all its wisdom want to even have a symbol for money?" Well, it is part of our language. We can't just pick and choose the words we like or don't like. So it also means abundance, which may have nothing to do with money. And why was it a coin? Well, we've been flicking coins into wishing wells and asking for a boon for so many hundreds and hundreds of years. There's a relationship between humans and water that has been going back for thousands of years, actually. Conception. This is a very interesting one, and we will cover this a little bit in my presentation. Two circles touching. I think it's important that people do see the repeatability. I do have lots of videos of me doing all of this, but I want to really get into how I've been using this to communicate. So, you know, Jim, we can discuss about sharing anything that people want to see later or direct people to different podcasts that I've done where I've shared that perhaps. This is light and guidance, this beautiful star. This is the change, winter, and between hydroglyph. Between is a new one. So that's something that I've really just been able to really say, yes, we've seen this consistently now. This is the information hydroglyph. Essentially, it looks just like ancient language. You can see here I've paired it with ancient hieroglyphs and cuneiform. There is no doubt at all that this is a kind of coding. Now, this is not just me that sees this. There are now thousands of people around the world that have been doing this freezing method and see the same symbol. Interestingly, with this particular symbol, over the last year and a half, regardless if someone is using the word information or not, 8 out of 10 times people are seeing this hydroglyph. That has led me on to really start diving into what does this particular hydroglyph mean. And I have been getting a lot of help from different people around the world, including the nonverbal, or they like to be called beyond verbal, autistic community, because they have access to other realms of consciousness and have been able to essentially open me up to realize that these hydroglyphs for information, essentially every little line is a doorway into another realm of consciousness. And these have sound that emanate from them, and they also have healing properties just in the viewing of them. And I'm in the process of actually finding a hydroglyph that can help people with things like cancer, things like depression, various ailments and things that people have been going through, where there could be actual interaction through visuals, through sound, that help heal them. So this is a big project that I'm taking on next year. This is just what the hydroglyph looks like when you have the background taken out. I want you just to see how much coding is in this hydroglyph. This is interwoven. So this, essentially, water is not reading words, it is absorbing the energy of this word, reverse engineering it back to some kind of living principle that we can see, we can photograph, we can touch, and we can embody by eating the crystallography. So that's a very potent thing. And here is the word or symbol for completion, for the energy of completion. This is the word or the energy of love. So I have been working with hydroglyphs in various ways, and anyone else that knows my work knows that water shares information through this particular crystallographic method in 3 ways. So I am not freezing water to a solid, it is a liquid crystal. Essentially, it takes 5 minutes and 20 seconds in my freezer. I take the sample out, there's liquid on top, ice underneath, I tip the liquid away, and I photograph the remaining crystallography, which is in a more of a gel state than a solid state. So I can see that water can share this repeatable hydroglyph, so you can start to read the messages in water. And I can also see that water shares picture imagery. For example, I might show someone a picture of someone's face by printing out a photograph, putting the dish of water on top of it for 30 seconds, removing, and I will see their face in the ice. Now, I have over 70,000 photos of water responding in this type of way. And I think that there's just so much evidence now. It's beyond just a coincidence that this is happening. So let's dive into what I've been doing. Now, what is this picture? Well, the story behind this picture is that there was a lady who has a dog, and the dog got very sick very fast. The dog started vomiting and was really unwell. And she had a friend who was a vet. She lived kind of rurally, and the vet took an hour to get to her house. And the lady had been on my beginner's workshop where I taught the freezing method and I talked about hydroglyphs the day before. And so she was giving the dog water to drink to try to rehydrate it while the vet was coming. And she wanted to see, well, maybe the water can diagnose what's wrong with her dog. And so when she did the crystallography of this water, and she did this crystallography almost immediately as it was happening. And because it's so quick, it's so easy to do. Well, she got this. And what is this? Well, each of these little kind of lines here is the hydroglyph for sugar. And when the vet came, they found out actually that the dog had got into a stash of chocolate and had made itself sick. So it was really saturated in sugar. So actually the water was able to tell and communicate. The dog communicated what was wrong just by licking the water, and the water was able to reveal what happened with the dog. This is me diagnosing myself. I had a stomach ache, so I put the water on top of my stomach. And I then froze the water, and I got something that looked like carrots. Now, that day I had actually gone and a friend had made a casserole. I was in a horrendous car accident years ago, and one of the only things that I can't tolerate or digest well is carrots. So I asked her, "Was there carrot in the casserole?" And she said yes. So water was able to show me, oh, it's the carrots that made you feel unwell. And in fact, that's exactly what was right, although this friend of mine she just forgot, she didn't realize actually that I had a problem with carrots. This was where it was some years ago, where I was seeing and trying to get an idea of where I was in my cycle. And I again put the dish of water on top of my stomach, and the water revealed something that looks very much like ovaries with an egg inside. So here is something interesting as well. We're looking at hydroglyphs, and you might remember this one, the two circles touching, is the conception hydroglyph. Well, there have been a remarkable amount of people that have started to learn my freezing method and have specifically got this hydroglyph and it's really stood out to them. And then later on that day or a week or two later, they actually find out that they are pregnant. Now, this doesn't just relate to humans. This is where I took an egg, and I was getting my eggs from a friend who had free-range chickens and also a rooster. And I put the egg in the water, and I removed the egg afterwards. And when I froze it, what I got was unlike the repeated patterns that I normally see in eggs, where I just see a shape of an egg. Well, this egg had something inside it. And when we cracked the egg open, what we found is that indeed this egg was a fertilized egg, which you can tell by looking at the yolk, and there's like a little dot thing on top of the yolk. And so we were able to see that water read the information of the egg before we could even know that the egg was in fact a fertilized egg. This is in communicating with other things that are not human. Again, this one over here, this is when I recorded my cat purring. Over here is the sound of cicadas. Over here is where I recorded the sound of a beehive. And when I played that sound of the beehive to the water prior to freezing, it designed this incredibly complex imagery that really looks a lot like the honeycomb. Here is where I put water right by a fern. And one of the reasons I did that is that an Indigenous Hawaiian friend of mine has done a lot of research and says that there is an alien atmosphere 1 inch out of a fern, and how ancient ferns are and how they have not changed at all over millions of years. And so interestingly, when I froze that water, it designed the circumpunct symbol, which is also the 0-point energy symbol, the circle with a dot in the middle. And I think there's a lot more we can learn from that. Now, this has been a very powerful story that I'm about to tell you, where water really is proven itself to be a voice for the voiceless. It's where I've been able to really understand something using hieroglyphs that is beautiful. and important. So I had a mother reach out to me. She was exhausted and she was asking me if I could help her. Her daughter was extremely disabled, nonverbal, in a wheelchair. This mother had really looked like no support. And she said, I know this sounds crazy, but I just want to know, does my daughter know I love her? And like, I'm a mum, and I said, of course she knows. Of course she knows how much you love her. And she said, no, but like all I have is this angry face every day because it feels like life is just so hard and this is taking such a toll on me. And and like I just need to know. And I said, well, how can I help you? And she said, well, I would like to record my daughter. And after I ask her, do you know how much I love you? And if she makes any sounds, I'll record them and I'll send them to you. Maybe you can play it to the water and we see what happens. And I said, yes, of course. Of course, I'll do that. And so she was with her daughter, asked the question. The daughter could make kind of sounds, so she recorded the sounds. And I played the sounds to the water and I froze it using my method and I did the whole thing. And there were 4 hydroglyphs in their dish. Now they asked for their dish to be kept private, which I fully respect, but they've allowed me to share the story and they've also allowed me to give examples of what hydroglyphs were there. So the first hydroglyph over here, the empty hexagon, has the energetic meaning of individual as well as I. The heart you've seen, you know that's love. Over here, the multiple circles, right? The multiple circles, that means essentially a lot and multiple. And over here we call it the speckle. That means both earth and mother. So I FaceTimed with these two. I wanted the daughter to be there because essentially this is a translation of her noises that she was making, that her thoughts that she was trying to say but couldn't. And I said to them, you know what? You have been asking all this time, does my daughter know how much I love her? Well, for the first time, your daughter has been able to tell you something very important. She is saying, I love you so much, Mummy. And the mum was crying. It gets me every time. But the little girl, she was trying to clap her hands and she was smiling. And this was and is a voice for the voiceless. This work is so important right now. I actually think another word for water is hope. And hope is something that human beings can move mountains with. Now, I will just end it here. I have more that I could share, Jim. I'm happy to, but I also don't want to take too much time. I do have one more thing that I discovered when I was in Egypt that is quite extraordinary, which I'm happy to share, but I'll just follow your lead.
Well, I would say if you can do it in say 1 or 2 minutes, we would love to see it. What you're showing us, Veda, is phenomenal.
Thank you. Well,
It's phenomenal. Just take
well,
another minute or two.
okay. Okay. Well, this is very quick. This is working with seeds, and then I'll just show you quickly what I found and this is important because this is also working with plants. So when I put a sunflower seed into the water, it doesn't show me the sunflower seed. It reads the information of the seed and the potential of the seed, and it designs the outcome of the seed, the sunflower. Here is where I've repeated that. I've put the seed in the water, removed it, and it's showing me the outcome of the seed, the sunflower again. Here is where I've put this flax seed into the water, removed it, and it's shown me the pods from where the flax seed came from. Here's where I've used an apple seed, and this is repeated here. Now, this is where I was recently in Egypt. Nobody's seen this in the world yet. So I thought it would be a nice place to share, Jim. So we went into the Hathor temple, which was my favorite temple in Egypt. And one of the things we were told is that everybody's always looking up, no one's looking down. So I spent quite a lot of time looking down on the floor just because. And I found there was one hieroglyph on the floor of this temple. There was no other glyphs, and I'm not talking hieroglyphs, I'm talking a hydroglyph. So this over here was taken, so I've worked a lot with the celestial bodies, essentially seeing how the full moon and the new moon and various things affect water. And on July 5th, 2024, this is the new moon in Cancer. So we got the conception hydroglyph and the line is the father line, essentially. This is also a symbol that I see from water from Antarctica. That's a whole nother thing. On the floor of the Hathor temple was the exact same symbol. And this was underneath where they have a whole depiction of the cosmos and the phases of the moon. Now, this is where I found it on the floor. It's my cameraman. And this is just such an incredible temple. And so on the floor, you can see a hydroglyph of which I have verified and have seen, oh gosh, over all of these years. Just to see it there, I think that there is links between the ancient world, hydroglyphs. I think that water stores in all information, and that it could well be how the Akashic records are stored. And that through this symbolic language, as it grows and grows and grows, we can communicate with all life, including extraterrestrial life. In fact, there's some work that I've done where I actually have a symbol for extraterrestrial. Doesn't work for alien, but the symbol is for extraterrestrial. And it always comes with the conception hydroglyph. And even around crop circles, I often see the extraterrestrial hydroglyph with the conception hydroglyph together. So I think there's a lot more to learn, and I'll leave it there.
Veda. Just think for a moment, everybody. We may be the first generation in history that has been able, at a public level, to bear witness to the way water communicates. And Veda, you're providing an exactitude. It's like a lexicon. It's like a dictionary of the intelligence of water. And when you think that water is everywhere in the universe, it was the first element that emerged out of the Big Bang, you get a sense what you're tapping into is deep language. You're tapping into the Akashic field, my friend. I mean, this is not insignificant. So we'll circle back to you, but this is a scientific breakthrough of, I think, Copernican proportions, everybody. So Veda, thank you so much. And by the way, Ubiquity University has an academic partnership with Veda, and we have a certificate program that people can study Veda's methodology and learn the language of the hydroglyphs. So if anyone's interested in a deeper dive with Veda, there are ample opportunities. So Veda, thank you. Thank you.
My honor.
And now, everyone, we want to move from water to the apex species, the white lions, and to introduce us to that extraordinary and equally momentous and mysterious domain. I want to invite my very good and old friend, Linda Tucker, who is the founder of the White Lion Protection Trust. And like Veda, she's been doing pioneering work sort of on the ground with the white lions, and probably is singularly responsible for saving them from extinction. And when you think that they are the apex of the apex, to save them from extinction in this moment is a Herculean task. So Linda, thank you for everything that you've done. And tell us about the white lions and how you communicate with them.
Jim, thank you. Veda, thank you. If time permits, we will work from the apex predator and find the connection with water, because they are part of the guardians of water on this planet. So let's see if we have the time for that. I would like to help everyone navigate this impossible and incredibly exciting moment we're in by considering the apex in the ecosystem, the white lions, who are the star lions, the bridge between our realm and the celestial realms. And they represent the whole of the ecosystem because they are the apex animal, which is the role we have attempted to play. So we identify with lions in a specific way, as you can imagine, as humans wishing to be lion-hearted. Is it possible for me to share just a sequence of slides so I can, if I share this, can we?
Yes, you could just share your screen.
Activate that. Okay, so we share screen, and here we go. So I'm taking everyone back to this, my story, because I believe it's highly relevant for us all. And that takes us right back to 1991, when I was fully in the consumerist world of marketing, advertising, the glamour industry. I returned to Africa on a specific occasion, found myself in the middle of the bushveld at night, surrounded by a pride of 24 lions. And the vehicle, which was an old open Jeep, was trapped amongst these lions. It was at night. The driver became panicked. And essentially, we believed, whether we were right or not remains to be seen, we believed one of us was going to be consumed by those angry lions who became more and more irate as we panicked. And the astounding outcome this dark night in 10th of November 1991 was that a medicine woman came. There's a pride of totally calm white lions, but this was an aggressive pride in the middle of the bushveld. She came walking at night through the lions with a baby on her back. Many of you might know the story, and she came to our rescue. The key for our discussions here and our learning that makes this universal for all of us is the message that she gave me, because I went back to that artificial world and I realized I saw everything differently from that moment on. I suddenly became acutely aware of what the animal had experienced that was now food on my plate. I suddenly became acutely aware of what torture animals had gone through for the makeup that I was putting on my face. So the whole world changed its axis, and I suddenly realized I had to give up my husband, my life, my job, my house. I gave everything up, and I returned to Africa to find this extraordinary indigenous medicine woman who essentially said, "What took you so long to wake up?" when I found her. And I believe that that is the key to humanity's invitation and crisis at this time. We have been asleep, and I'll talk us through the solution of how we can reach beyond our stupor and communicate with the high intelligences that are calling us to wake up. So she explained, I asked her the obvious question: how did you do that? How did you walk through a pride. You walked into the jaws of death with your baby on your back. How did you do it? And she said, so take note, she said, there was no danger. You were the aggressor. The lions were protecting life. There was a lioness in the riverbed giving birth to a cub, the last white lion cub that was seen for another 2 decades in the wild. So when I returned and tracked her down, she explained that the white lions were now extinct in the wild. It had taken me 3 years to commit to this absolute quantum shift and support nature rather than this delusional world of social climbing and dog eat dog. And so what I found was a whole mystery uncovering about the critical importance of the white lions, and then at the same time, the fact that they'd been eradicated from their sacred lands and sent to zoos and circuses around the globe and taken down by trophy hunters for astronomical figures. So she then predicted that a lioness would be born to remind humanity that we cannot kill the sacredness in nature, much as people try. And that she then predicted, this is moments after her prediction, that I needed to find this lioness and return her to the lands of her origin. Amazingly, a lioness was then born in Bethlehem on Christmas Day. Bethlehem in South Africa is a death camp where lions had been forcibly removed from the wild and they were being bred to be killed. I then contacted this incredibly wise medicine man. He is known as the Library of African Knowledge, Credo Mutwa, and we spent the next 2 decades working together. Essentially, he told me the white lions are star lions, and that was not a myth I discovered. This lioness born in Bethlehem on Christmas Day, it turned out that she was born in alignment through an eclipse of the sun, the moon, the star, and Sirius. So if we have time, I'll talk into the true stellar origins of the white lions. That is not myth and theory any longer. In my project, I've tracked it with some of the world's leading astrologers, and it's a critical fact. They hold the gateway to the cosmic realms. So my project, once I committed my life to protecting the white lions, walked that line between ancient indigenous knowledge systems that I revered with all my heart and modern science, and how to bridge this divide and to prove the importance of these extraordinary beings. So here's a brief example that I'd like to share with you that evidences the abilities of these stellar beings to communicate across the species barrier, but more than that, to engage with technologies that we think are scientific, which they are way ahead in managing. So here, what Jason's doing, my lion ecologist partner for 20 years, is he's putting a GPS tracking collar on a lion. But this was where we put the tracking collar on the lioness from Bethlehem, who I rescued and managed to return to the wilds. So she's waking up from being tranquilized, and we put a tracking collar around her neck, which was activated and working. GPS means that it's a satellite collar that can be downloaded through devices. It was working when it was put on her neck. And then when she woke up, it suddenly stopped working. And none of the scientists here could understand why that should be. From the earliest stages, because I was introduced to the indigenous knowledge systems that I shared deep respect for, I could communicate with her. And I asked her, why has she wiped the satellite collar. It's no longer functioning. And she said, I shouldn't be collared. And then I explained that Jason and I had a very normal kind of engagement, verging on a row, about whether we put collars on these luminous animals. And I had said, of course we don't put collars on it. And he said, of course we do. And he said, what about the example if you find Mara in a poacher's snare and you working with your telepathic connections, and I've got telepathy. Sorry, I've got telemetry. I had the telepathy, he had the telemetry. And he said, that way we can track her and save her. And I said, you're absolutely right. We've got to use these tracking collars. So I communicated that to her, that we were doing this in service for her survival and her cubs. And then she reactivated the radio collar. We'll circle back to that if we have time in our open discussions, because that's a key, what we did there, not only to communicate, but to offer service to creation. That is a quality of the true human in the emergence of our times. At this moment of the species moment, which the ancient Egyptians called Zeptepi, the moment of end times into new times. So just briefly to track us through, because my aim is to assist everyone to engage in the opportunity and the crisis we're in, knowing very simply what the rules of engagement are, according to my experience. And to do that, we need to look at how the ecosystem works and then get our guidance of how we can navigate the current human systems. Remember that beautiful word ecosystem reminds us that nature is an echo from source. So it takes us to that ancient Egyptian knowledge that nature, earth, is heaven's mirror. And so our project has always worked on that understanding, and we call it ecocentric, where all of creation is interconnected, as opposed to the old egocentric model that I had been trapped in, and most humans are still trapped in, separating us from the rest of creation, thinking we are better and higher and more intelligent. And that led to separatism, which has created all the woes of our model in dominion over our planet. So focusing on the solution, which we do every day in our project, I'd like to guide you through the difference between predation and consumerism, because that is the key to how we're going to navigate these tumultuous times. First of all, note the word predation. Predation predates the human consumerism model. Again, if we have more time, I'll talk into it. But instead of talking into it, let me show you the difference. Predation is a gifting system as opposed to a taking system, the need and greed system that humanity has imposed on our planet. So predation can be seen as a pyramid, the trophic levels from primary producers, primary consumers, right up all the way to the apex animal. So it's a pyramid, and it's interesting that the lions were born in alignment with the great pyramids of Giza along the Nile meridian. But let's see how it works. How does the predator actually govern the ecosystem from the top down? So here you can see she's taken down a wildebeest. And in the human language, predator is a terrible word. It's a killing machine. If a human is a predator, they're a danger to children and women. But let's actually now look at how it works in the ecosystem. So here's one of our white lions. You can see behind him the vultures. What has happened a couple of hours before I took this photograph? You'll notice there's a bit of blood on his face. He's got a round belly. Yes, he's made a kill. And there the vultures already are on the site. Now, what are they doing? Of course, they're feeding themselves. So that's how they replenish. But they are the cleaning agents of the ecosystem. Without vultures, there would be disease, contamination, collapse of the system. So they're getting their food so that they can do their work in the ecosystem. And then behind, more than one lion will be on that kill. Behind the lion there, you see another of the cleaning agents. This is another scavenger who's coming in, a little jackal, who is feeding, getting scraps from the king's table. So let's keep going down the ecosystem. And, oh, well, there's a giraffe, but didn't we think that giraffes are actually vegetarian? What's it doing eating a bone? Well, giraffes are so huge that they need the calcium from bones. So they go into the kill site and they'll take a bone and crunch it to support their skeletal structure. And then their service for nature is they create systems that other species can flourish in. I don't have time to go into that, but let's move on to the next scavenger who's coming into the scene. This is the hyena, and she is specifically designed to be able to crunch the bones. And once the hyena does so, it passes through her system such that the droppings that she leaves has high degree of calcium, and species like this cannot survive without the hyena who's eaten from the lion's table. This species, in turn, is a landscape architect moving seeds into other parts of the ecosystem and therefore assisting the flourishing of the whole ecosystem. We keep going down through every single species, and then we find this lump of dung from the lions, waste product. But it's not waste in the ecosystem. Here is the sacred scarab beetle, rolling it, depositing it in the earth, serving all the way down into the earth, replenishing the earth, and there is new life emerging as a result, because the scarab beetle digs into the earth, puts its eggs in, and when the eggs hatch, they release the remain of the dung into the fertile earth. And life begins again for humanity, who is utterly dependent on the base of the pyramid, and then we would hope all the way up. So are you noticing the difference between our model of consumerism and predation, that model that predates us? This is, as you know, I don't need to remind us, it's so painful, because this is the result of separatism, believing that we are better and other than all the rest of life. And everything, waste, literally is destructive to our planet. The results, I'm going to mention this because I have to. We have come to the end of that consumerist cycle. When our species believes we can breed lions in cages to eat them, as is the case in the lion bone trade that I've had a role in shutting down, these are lions as consumptive components going to China, Korea, Laos, in the belief that humans have a right to eat the apex predator. That's where we are in our model. That's one index of just how on the brink we are, that we believe we have a right to do so, breaking all the codes of creation. So let's move on. And of course, this is water frozen, collapsing, and the risk of climate crisis that we face right now. But I'm reminding us that we have the key to track our way back to the divine human and return to the garden, call it the Garden of Eden. In all cultures, there is a golden age beginning and a golden age offering itself to us now. The white lion has a specific role with water all the way up the Nile meridian, because it was born exactly, its sacred site is in exact alignment with the Nile and therefore the pyramids of Giza and the secrets of the ancient Egyptian cultures. But in practical terms, the apex animal not only supports everything all the way down, it supports water too, just as wolves in Yellowstone Park, I hope you know that important experiment, protected waterways there. We can go into that if we have time, how they protect waters. But I think one more example about predation will be echoingly powerful for you. Here, going back to Credo Mutwa, who holds the ancient knowledge systems in the memory banks of his mind, going all the way back to Egypt in an unbroken tradition, indicated to me that the difference between consumerism and predation is that predation is a contract of the soul. That changes everything if we know that we are working with the soul, and that is the intelligence that allows us to cross all divides. Now, amazingly, you can't prove the existence of the soul, can you? Or can't you? Well, the amazing thing is that my partner, the lion ecologist, just gathering facts over 20 years in a comparative study between white lions and golden lions, proved that white lions can hunt equal to golden lions in the wild, because there's all this misinformation about the fact that they are freaks. They can't survive in the wild because they have this white luminous color. So they're freaks of nature. They have no function. In fact, the reverse is the case. They have no problem hunting in the wild. And his study over 2 decades showed something more than that. He showed in a graph that they hunt equal to golden lions, apart from one exception. On full moon nights, now this is counter-suggestive, on full moon nights, white lions hunt better than golden lions. Now, white lions under the moon look like ghosts. They're often called ghosts because they are so luminous. Every species can see them illumined, and yet the species gifts themselves. It's a gifting system, knowingly, to the lion. So one more example of IIC, intuitive interspecies communication, that has worked with this project since the beginning. A dear friend of mine who's an expert in interspecies communication and I, sitting with a lioness, this white lioness who'd taken the wildebeest. We asked the wildebeest, how do you feel about this? You're being consumed. You're being taken by this lioness. I know that everything else benefits from the lions taking you, but how do you feel about it? And here's the amazing response. The wildebeest said, it is the greatest honor. My soul and the white lion are becoming one. It is part of the oversoul where we are one. And I am upgrading into the frequency of pure sunlight that is these celestial beings. That's the message we got from the wildebeest in the crisis of the moment. And it showed us both an ascension spire that links the Nilotic meridian with the Milky Way, the river of stars. So I can end there and return us to any point of discussion later as we engage with the other speakers, all of whom's knowledge is interrelated. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you so much. It's a powerful message of just how nuanced the consciousness of these beings really is and how sophisticated they are. So thank you for that. And I hope we have time to bring you back in along with Veda and the other speakers for our dialogue at the end. But we'll now move on, everyone, from water to the white lions to the orangutans. And Gary Shapiro, who was one of the first scientists to figure out how to establish intelligible communication with one of the higher primates. So, Gary, in as concise a way as you can, please tell us how did you actually establish the intelligible communication?
Well, thank you. Thank you, Jim. It's a privilege to be here. Linda and Veda, those are fabulous presentations. So let me just begin by telling you nearly 5 decades ago, as a young grad student conducting my doctoral research in the peat swamp forests of Indonesian Borneo, I found myself in one of the most unlikely classrooms on Earth. Fallen logs and branches on the bank of a crocodile-infested Blackwater River across from Camp Leakey, surrounded by ex-captive orangutans who were learning how to return to the forest. Now, these were provisioned, free-ranging individuals with names like Rini, Rico, Gundul, Unyuk, and others, whose lives had been disrupted by the illegal pet trade and who now needed both rehabilitation and relationship. And it was within that context that I began teaching sign language to some of them. Now, what made those early years special was not that an orangutan could learn to associate manual gestures with reference, but that they chose to engage. Now, orangutans live by their own timing, their own rhythms, their own internal motivations. And importantly, when I finished my studies, they continued their own journey to reclaim their birthright of being free in their forest home. So when I called out into the canopy, Rini, who was an adult female, and she would carefully, deliberately make her way down from the trees to sit beside me, it wasn't because she had to, it was because she chose to. That choice set the foundation for everything that followed. Now, working with Princess, a young female ex-captive who adopted me as her parent, was similar. She was extremely huggable and extraordinarily perceptive, sometimes responding to signs before I finished making them, sometimes quietly reflecting, as orangutans do, before offering a gesture of her own. Now, these weren't mechanical repetitions. They were acts of understanding, intention, and often shared curiosity. So, training signs was done mainly by taking their hands and molding them into a correct configuration and through emotion, while showing them a referent, or the object that which the sign stood for. Over time and repetitions, they learned the association and would make the sign on their own without the molding or prompting. So I was able to show that Rini learned arbitrary signs such as nut, iconic signs like food, invented signs like scratch, and put them into simple sequences like you scratch here. Princess even combined signs to describe a new referent, calling canned pineapple sweet fruit, demonstrating what linguists would call productivity. But one of the lessons that became clear very quickly, and which aligns deeply with the theme of this forum, is that intelligible communication extends far beyond sign language. And at the time, many of us believed that if apes learned to use our signs, they would want to express themselves more like we do. That is, maybe tell stories. What I discovered is that was not the case. And though they can use taught signs to describe their world and how they felt, signs were mainly used instrumentally to obtain items or actions of interest. And interest in that referent was a prime predictor of how quickly a sign could be learned. Learning signs was only a doorway, one pathway into a much broader landscape of meaning making, one already rich with their own natural forms of expression, intention, and understanding. So while orangutans are the least social great apes, They make facial expressions and postures, use deliberate, negotiated gestures from invitations to play, to requests for help, to subtle refusals. They engage in actions in environmentally appropriate ways that create local protocultures, such as tool making and tool use, nest building, extractive foraging that reflects learning, memory, and shared attention. Orangutans communicate through silence, through long periods of contemplation, which in themselves reflect a cognitive stance, one remarkably different from the rapid-fire signaling of other great apes. They map their world internally using mental spatial models to plan routes, anticipate fruiting trees, or avoid potential conflict zones. And of course, they have their own vocalizations, over 30, including the signature "ooh, ooh," the long call that fully adult males use deliberately to indicate their status, their position in space, their intent, and future travel. Now, all of these are forms of intelligible communication. Some are visual, some are auditory, some are gestural, and some are cognitive, quiet forms of communication that nonetheless demonstrate foresight, awareness, and a theory of mind. Now, my early research taught me that communication with other species is not simply a matter of teaching them our symbols. It requires attuning ourselves to the full spectrum of how they express meaning. It means building trust and recognizing their sentience and personhood as it naturally unfolds through their gestures, their choices, attention, silence, and presence, not merely through speech or human-style language. It calls on us to respect their forest intellect and to honor them as conscious persons of the forest, which is what their name means in the Indonesian language. It beckons us to admire them as incredible mothers who spend up to 8 years teaching their offspring what foods to eat, to appreciate them as sophisticated eco-engineers who sustain the health and integrity of their forest home, and to respect the dignity of an endangered species whose wisdom, patience, and equilibrium often surpass our own. And I can't conclude my comments without mentioning that orangutans share approximately 97% of their genes with us. Our common ancestor dates back 12 to 16 million years. According to taxonomists, humans are great apes, and orangutans are our most distant great ape cousins. We are family. It's important to acknowledge that intelligible communication is already happening across many domains between humans and other primates, as we heard with Linda, amongst our species in the forest, between indigenous people and forests, even in the way ecosystems signal resilience or collapse. Understanding those signals may be one of the most important steps we can take in building a more responsive relationship with the living world. Those first years in the forest, again, this was back 47 to 44 years ago, showed me that when we truly listen, whether to a gesture, a long call, a moment of shared intention, or simply the contemplative presence of an orangutan sitting quietly beside us, the boundaries between species begin to soften. What remains is relationship and connection. And from that relationship, understanding emerges, perhaps revealing key concepts of the language of consciousness. So that's the perspective I bring to our dialogue today, and why I believe the conversation about intelligible communication between humans, other species, and even the non-biological world is not only timely, but essential. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary, for your pioneering work. it's so interesting. You know, I imagine if you had an intuitive, clairvoyant conversation with an orangutan, they would show the same kind of sophistication that Linda experienced with the white lions and Veda with water. Some scientists will one day, I'm sure, build on your work and demonstrate that. But so thank you very much. Now, everyone, we want to transition from the mammals and the elements to the plants, which, as I indicated in my opening remarks, is of particular importance for us. And I want to bring in Selene Manga, who's a member of the Quechua tribe in Peru, who is a plant medicine woman. She also has advanced degrees from Johns Hopkins University and Harvard University in the United States in epidemiology and psychiatry, and how plants can assist humans in their therapeutic process and their process of illumination. So, Selene, thank you for joining us. And just take a few minutes and tell us about your work with plants and plant medicine.
Thank you. Thank you so much for organizing this. I want to also offer a little ceremony, a small ceremony for you just quickly to enhance the power of this group of people thinking so generously about the other beings than human, lines of spirit and lines of pure alive elements like cells and other. Please, I want to share my screen. Just briefly, I prepared this for you to try to explain what is this. The plant's intelligence. I have been working my whole life with plants. I received this from my grandmother, who are also indigenous, like I am. And I did migrate from science again to the traditional healing because I want to keep ancestrality and what I learned in the process of becoming a traditional healer is talking to me about all this. So please let me know if you see the screen, the images. It's okay?
Yes.
Yes, we do. Could you make full screen? Thank you.
Oh, yes. So the cosmovision of the indigenous people related to plants are like we are having the same physical composition, chemical composition as human bodies and the plant bodies. And these change according with the geographical region where the plants are growing. So I will start with some ancestral indigenous context of plants. I will briefly touch these aspects, very briefly. I will try more to transmit to you my personal experience, my life experience with plants and what is the meaning of having a plant in our planet, in our lives. For the indigenous and ancestral cosmovisions around the world, like my own tribe, essentially the plants are spirits and energy. It's how we conceptualize. And we conceptualize that every plant invite you into an ancient relational space. If you compare with any synthetics providing from the human manufacturing, invites you to precision and possibility, and keep this is important for later. Plants can be profoundly healing and expansive if used with an intention, respect, and support. So we, the indigenous nations, conceive the plant as another being. We sing hundreds of songs dedicated exclusively to plants. We made poems to plants, especially those sacred plants we do have. So for us, as I says, plants for us in the ancestral cosmovisions are energy and spirit. That's it. Are alive beings with the same compositions of human serum, human skin, human organs. That's why we consider these as brothers and sisters, as siblings. But essentially, we interpreted plants as spirit and energy containers. Commonly used to feed us for industry, for make the sustainable the human life. Some plants are even for spiritual, religious, or personal growth purpose, like the sacred plants, which are more special, and I should dedicate 4 hours just to talk about sacred plants. I mean, special plants. Those plants will generate a connection with the divinity inside of us. And we really live that condition of the plants. We really honor the plants. Like in this moment, I am honoring the coca leaf. The coca leaf is something really sacred for us. I will go to what are the differences between plants compositions, metabolism, and human body compositions. What is fully evident now is the plants often mimic or build upon components found in human body, directly related with the geographical zone where the plant is living. There is a very well-known case of LSD. LSD derivated from ergot fungus, grows in different parts of the Tibet, the Southeast Asia, and also South America. And studying the composition of this LSD coming from the ergot fungus are totally different in potency and in effects over the human body. Why is important to connect the human body and the plant's body? Why? In our traditional settings, we use the plants with an intention, even if it's the case of a potato or a tomato. We say every day, thank you to the potato. Thank you to the potato, to the tomato, to the wheat, because it's going to be inside of us and taking part of our metabolites, and we will have the same composition. In indigenous view about the plants and the effects of the plants in the way how humans will drive our life in this planet, we consider that the spirit comes first. The spirit of the plant and the spirit of the human. So everything is based on the presence of the first spirit. So we consider it, for example, the chlorophyll contained into the plant, that is the spirit of the plant. The spirit of the plant is like green spirit. A chlorophyll gives you a lot of hemoglobin, gives you a lot of nutrients. That specific plant is a kind of nourishing being. But there are other plants also. In general, the plants are used as a vehicle for a sacred communion of man and the divine. Why? Because we saw and we every day got the confirmation and the evidence that just a divine connection between human life and plants life can be expressed as this wonderful miracle of the spinach having iron, of the spinach having nutrients for us, or the rose has this beauty, or this smell. We consider that just the divinity can send to us this iron and this smell and this beauty for enhance our life and for make our life a better experience in this planet. And there is also something important, that certain healers, all the healers, needs to act as a bridge we call chakahana in my language, Quechua, which is chakahana, chakana, is the connection with the divinity and is the word we use to describe certain properties of the plants. When the Western persons has described that there is a connection in the forest between one tree and another tree, and all the trees are connected inside the Mother Earth. Many indigenous nations, we say, so you discovered this now, is something that our ancestors has transmitted to us. There is a language between the plants, and sometimes we can see it with our senses. But even if we cannot see with our sense that connection into the forest, for example, or into the field of plants, we are very conscious that this connection is existing. And that connection is giving to us the power of still being alive beings. So spirit and energy is the same value that we give for humans being live and for plants live. And I want also, as a ceremonial starting, I wanted to give to you a blessing with these sacred plants. This is cat claw, uña de gato. It's a very potent plant, and also these coca leaves, and our fathers, the animals, are here present to say.
Excuse me, Selene.
Thank you.
Could you stop sharing your screen so we can get the full benefit of your blessing? There we go.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, thank you. So I am taking from my altar, I prepared for this opening morning, these elements. We use plants, but special plants like the coca leaf, who has a special power over the health of the people. And also we use this cortex from trees, and of course coca leaves and different elements from nature to ensure, to make us remind that we are just one spirit and one energy, even if we cannot remind every day. So I will finish with a song we wrote and we do for the plants. And this is one among thousands of songs we dedicate to the plants that allow us to be alive in this planet. And we honor also plants coming from other planets, plants that keep us connected with divinity. Hoja verde de la coca, humo blanco del cigarro, adivíname la suerte si ese muchacho me quiere. hoja verde de la coca, humo blanco del cigarro, adivíname la suerte, si ese muchacho me quiere. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Selene. You've given certainly me deeper appreciation of the fact that Lynn received the directive from the ayahuasca plant to recreate the State of the World Forum, because what you're providing for us is the scope and the depth of the intelligence of plants and the message that we are all one spirit and ultimately one body. So thank you. Thank you very, very deeply. We now, everyone, want to turn to yet another dimension of nature, bearing in mind that it's one thing to communicate intelligibly with another sentient being with mental telepathy. But what we've just heard from Selene is we communicate with the plants after we've ingested them, after they're inside us. And that's a very powerful communication for those of you who've taken any kind of plant journey. But it shows us the dimensionality of the intelligence we're dealing with here. And so now we want to move from Peru to Italy, to northern Italy, to the Federation of Damanhur with Esperide Ananas. Again, another very distinguished individual and very old friend. I've been to Damanhur a number of times. It's a magical place. And one of the things that they've done at Damanhur, which is quite extraordinary, is they've learned intelligible communication with Selfika art.
Mm-hmm.
And this is another dimension, everybody. Selfika, metal, and configurations and art. And yet it's possible there to engage in intelligible communication. So Esperide, tell us a little bit about Selfika art.
Hi, Jim. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. It's really a pleasure. And I'd love to talk to you about Selfika art, but I would like to go back to the question that you asked at the beginning, because I think it's very relevant. You asked, how can we share how we learn to communicate with intelligences that were not human? Because I think that at the basis of Selfika, one of the bases of Selfika is definitely the idea that in these times we are all awakening to new senses, and that we can create a field with which we can interact that can be the interface to opening more and more and more of these senses, so that we can realize how incredible life is and how many levels of life coexist with human life. And so a lot of the intention in creating and developing Selfika was, how can we bring tools that can somehow can work as prosthetics for senses that we already have as humans, but we forgot that we have them. And so, if I forget I have a hand, I don't use it. The hand is there, but I not use it. So how can we create something that can be accessible to everyone, that can reach people because it's in the form of objects that you can wear, or that people can go to for healing and for this really sensory awakening, which we feel it's at the basis of everything we're doing. Because the people that are talking to us today and the others on the forum, of course, are all people that have gone through this personal journey. You yourself, like, how do I open my senses? Because these senses filter reality and filter what we can perceive even before our brain can interpret what we perceive. So this theme of becoming fully sensory humans, we feel it's really intertwined with becoming humans, because at the moment we are not really humans yet. And some of the terrible, things shared by Linda, for instance, what we do to animals are really making us wonder. But when we open to those senses, we start to feel much more empathy. So again, Selfica was built to create an interface, allowing us to become more human. So the purpose of Selfica is not so much to communicate with Selfica, but how can we use it to communicate it with anything that we want to communicate with, whether it's nature, dolphins, apes, or plants. In my personal experience, I've had the quite extraordinary for me experience of being able to communicate with the selfic field. So to really kind of hear their voice in my head and being able to use what was coming through me to help others in process of healing, in processes of sensory expansion, in guiding people journey into journeys that very often people that have experience with plant medicine tell me they're very, very similar. So I think that Selfica creates something in our brain that allows access to different chemistry, to a different inner alchemy that gives us a doorway without needing to take medicine inside our body. It's not that we have anything against this, it's just not the way we do it. We are from Italy, we do not really have that tradition. And so we developed something different. And I would like, if possible, also to share a few slides. I will be very brief because I know we don't have a lot of time, but I think this will be interesting for everyone. So please allow me to share my screen, and then I go into full view. Okay, enter full screen. Okay. So this idea that we can communicate with other species with different levels of life is also based on the idea that, and I think the next speaker is going to talk about this, talk about the sun, that there is a source, a constant flow of information, communication, evolution codes coming to Earth. Where do they come from? They come from the sun. Are they generated in the sun? According to us, no, they're not generated from the sun. They connect all worlds where there is sentient life, where there is intelligence, when there is, sensory systems that can receive them, and we call them the synchronic lines. People are very familiar with the term ley lines. The synchronic lines are not the ley lines. The ley lines would be the consequence of synchronic lines. So the ley lines are more connected to Earth, while the synchronic lines connect life on Earth through the sun to the center part of our galaxy, from where we are receiving now also the information that guide our evolution. So if this is true, and we believe it is, and the ancient Chinese called this system the back of the dragon, and the people that built the Gothic cathedrals in Europe were very familiar. You go to Chartres. Chartres is a great gateway into this system. So they were building sacred spaces along these energy lines to be able to receive this information. So the first thing we did at Damano was to do the same. So to build our own version of a gateway, to connect with the energy of the synchronic lines, we built an incredible complex of temples inside a mountain. We call them the temples of humankind. So, if you want to see more of them, you can Google them. And this is one of the places where we host a lot of the processes that we do with Selfica, a lot of the different processes to speed up our awakening. So it's sacred space dedicated to humanity, to our divine presence, within, and our presence as divine beings in the cosmos. We built all of these temples by hand. It was not a cave, it was a solid mountain. And this is very important in the conversation we're having today, because this had to do also with being able to create a contact with mountain, to be able to create a specific relationship of energies with the dirt, the rock that was being brought out, and as we were entering. So not only the temples have a specific code of proportions and forms, but also how much of the rock was taken out has an influence. And we've been recently having many researchers come and measure the ions inside the temple, measure the coherence of the field, and they're finding really interesting results. So I'm just going to go through very quickly just a few images. There are a dozen of holes, and they're all built underground, and then they are created into beautiful spaces through art, because art is so important. Here we're talking about art, Jim, and we believe art is a fundamental tool for awakening. So I'm just going to not even telling you the names. You can look at them online, but just to give you an idea, we are underground inside the mountain. There's light everywhere, and everything is filled with art. And of course, as we were hearing now, we could not build an antenna unless we also had a relationship and a covenant, an alliance with nature. So on top of our temples, we have been taking care of a forest, which unfortunately had been really neglected over many years. So the trees are not very old, but they're very well taken care of. And we've built miles and miles of stone circuits. Here you can see one from top. We have some, they're much more complex than these ones, but you can walk for hours and hours and go up and down the mountain and always be inside this energy circuitry that I'm sure some of you maybe makes you think of Nazca. And yes, this is also one of the reasons we are communicating with what we believe to be non-terrestrial beings. Besides using the circles for walking them so that we can keep our energy fields aligned. Here's another photograph that gives an idea. Again, the idea of art as beauty, as stimulation of our brain, so many different colors. We use these circuits also to amplify functions. For instance, this is an energy healing inside one of these stone labyrinths. This, I just want to acknowledge the fact that the inspiration behind Selfika, behind the temples, was a man who you met, Jim. I think others of you online today have met. His name was Falco. He left his physical body in 2013 because he said his mission was completed, and it was now up to us to continue. And I'm very happy to say that we are one of the few communities that not only after the death of the founder has continued, but we're actually really continuing to develop and grow and transform. So here is Falco looking at one of the Selfika devices that he built. Okay, every piece of Selfic circuitry is made by hand. This is just a detail of some bracelets that can be worn. And this is an interesting, very old photograph of taken with a Kirlian camera of the aura of a Selfika. And we're talking about metal. So metal should not have an aura because apparently it's not living things. But when we use metal to create Selfika, they become conduits for an energy that at a higher level of complexity can actually start to communicate with us. This is, again, going back to the idea of nature. This is a small Selfika that we can wear to create a constant connection between the auric field of a person with nature, because one of the key problems we have is this disconnect with nature. So in order to awaken and to expand our sensory abilities, we need, first of all, to reconnect with nature. So not only the temples are using the trees as antennas, but we also use Selfika to become better antennas for this contact with nature ourselves. These are two bracelets. Normally they're built perfectly round, but they adjust to the aura of a person. These belong to the same person. You see, they all have changed in the same way. So again, this is a proof that these are not just objects, but they interact in a sort of intelligent way, adapting to the system of the person that is using them. Here we go into more complex Selfika. The larger one on the left is what we call the sphere of self. So here, going to water. Water is very important for memory, very important for the programming of Selfika. In this case, it's not just water, but it's alchemical liquids, which of course start with water, but then they undergo specific treatments in order to enhance even more the possibilities of interaction. And then you see some other Selfic tools for healing. These are personal Selfika, so we can also have microcircuitry that we use to protect ourselves, to help our functions, and also these have a function, we believe, in the afterworld, because life doesn't end when this body ends. Consciousness continues, and we also continue. These are other examples of Selfica. And then here we go into some of the healing spaces of Damara, where you see we have very, very complex ensembles of all this Selfica, so that we can heal using sound, using light at many different levels. Here's the same with a different light, another healing space. We are now starting to work very seriously with water. We've done lots of experiments, and we came up now, we created this circuitry, and lots of studies are proving that through Selfica, not only we can inform water, but we can give it like a sort of a higher energetic quality. So we're very pleased. This is the newest of our selfie circuitry at the moment. And then the last photograph is we use Selfica also to reawaken the energy systems of the human being. This is a kind of mythological representation of what we believe to be the extensions of the different chakras. So as human beings, not only we have chakras along our spine and our head, but connecting to those energy centers, we also have energetic extensions. And for instance, for sure, many of you are familiar with the Sufis. And the Sufi always talk about, and their symbol, one of their symbols, the heart with wings. And for many years, I thought it was a beautiful metaphor. And then I started working with Selfica, and I realized that when we really work with the heart center, the wings start to come out as energetic supports for our awakening growth and really our becoming human beings. So I think I can stop.
Thank you, Esperide.
I hope I was quick enough and interesting enough.
Thank you. I think we'll leave it at that. But it's another dimension, everyone, of the potency of nature and how nature can not only engage in intelligible communication, but as Selfica demonstrates, it can be a medium, an interpreter for human extraterrestrial and interspecies communication. So thank you for bringing that in, Esperide. Thanks very much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
We are now, everyone, going to leave the earth for a while. And I would like to bring in Susan Manewich, who's been doing extraordinary research on cosmos and plasma intelligence, as she calls it. She's done some courses for us. She is a researcher. She's taught at major universities in the United States. And so, Susan, talk to us about cosmic aspects of the human communication, and in particular, the work that you've been doing around the sun and plasma intelligence.
Sure. Thank you so much, Jim. And I just want to say I'm just a child of the universe, though, just like I think the rest of us. And hopefully we can feel that. And I know just listening to everybody else so far, I'm so jazzed, excited, charged, and love all these connection points. So thank you again so much for allowing me to be here today and inviting me in. So I want to talk about I'm only going to do one slide, and it's not going to be right now. It'll be in a little bit. So I want to talk about solar intelligence. And the way I look at solar intelligence is it's plasma, the intelligent medium of cosmic love and human ascension. And I don't say that as like a nice to have. I want to share a story with you. It's a real story from my life that has guided this work, or rather it's a mission as part of working with the creator on just basically what needs to be done here during this time of transition. And plasma itself, this intelligent solar light, it's the sun is the activator. The sun gives us life on Earth here, and it helps our human family to move from Homo sapien to Homo luminous. And I think we've heard that. So I want to talk just a little bit about what I remember, and I want to connect it to the extraterrestrial phenomenon as well. Phenomenon, that sounds like such a funny word. When I was, I actually am one of these people that remembers my incarnation, and I do tell that story because I remember being connected to this eternal light that looked like a really big sun. And that's something that I just innately remembered. And without getting into too much detail on that, I will just simply say I was extremely excited to come to Earth. I didn't know it was Earth at the time. I just knew that I was being activated on behalf of the Creator to then, move to a space and, yes, get a body. And so I share that because Esperide, one of the things that you had said is, well, it doesn't just come from our local sun. We know that the sun is this activator, but it doesn't just come from our local sun. I would agree with that. My pre-incarnation memories has to do with its connection to source. And then here on Earth in a body is our relationship that we have to creation with the sun. Obviously, the Earth is represented in this, but let's talk a little bit more about the sun. So this joy, this creation, this service to the cosmos, prior to incarnating, I will tell you something. Love was innate. Love was everywhere. It wasn't this kind of nice to have. It was just the isness of this eternal light and this energy that was there. And we hear so much about it's important for us to love and to experience love, to have empathy. Yes, all those things are important. I mean, it really is the language, it really is the frequency, it really is what the cosmos is made up of that we get to receive from our sun. And sometimes I'm very well aware, because I do research on how humans, how we feel as it relates to some of these solar influences that are happening and going on. It seems to be messing with our physiology. It seems to be, sometimes we can maybe feel like we're in a bad mood, or sometimes we have this memory that's coming up and, maybe you thought that you dealt with that or you handled that. And then, lo and behold, you find yourself becoming emotional. Well, that's part of, like I said, the research that I'm doing, and just helping people to really understand what we may be experiencing and going through during this planetary shift. One of the things that I was shown before incarnating in was that there was an imbalance that needed to come into play. There's an imbalance where I was going, which obviously is here on Earth. I knew that pretty quickly when I got here and got a body, that there was a need to have this balance, because what the planet was going to be going through, what the cosmos was going to be going through, was this great shift. And the balance of the Earth was really critical to the harmony of the sun, and to where we are in the interstellar medium, and to where the cosmos, the coherency of the cosmos in the Earth was an incredibly important part of that. And so there's the aspect of us needing to be spiritually prepared for these changes and for these shifts. And I know that some people do experience light beings. They've experienced extraterrestrials. I'm actually really glad Veda made a differentiation between extraterrestrials and aliens per se. So I would say that all of my contact has been very much along a similar spectrum of, I think, what indigenous groups have spoken about, but also really grounded in this aspect of the evolution of life on planet Earth. So therefore, extraterrestrial. And I feel like we're getting to a point in time that those nuances are actually quite important as we discuss those. But I do think that there's some of this preparation that the sun is helping us to experience through solar flares, through cosmic rays as well, which can emanate from the sun, but it can also emanate from outside the sun. But it does seem to be charging and really stimulating and breaking apart some things that are probably not so great for us to hold on to. For example, like if we are drinking alcohol per se, this is not a judgment, but what you could have maybe consumed last week, you can't touch this week, and probably won't be able to touch again. So it seems to be shifting our physiology, and I would say quite rapidly as well. So there's this preparation for this next phase that we're going through as we move through these different times. And it has this evolutionary purpose of it. I was speaking with a friend of mine who works with Indigenous elders, and he said, what the elders are saying is we can't even really comprehend how much love is actually out there for us to experience. Because if we were to feel that right now without this progression, let's say, that the sun is helping us experience, then it would just be too overwhelming. Our circuitry may shut down. And I've also done some research on people that have had ET contact. And one of the things that they will say is, sometimes that contact is so intense, the energy is so amplified, it's so strong that I just passed out, I fell asleep, or I don't remember. And it was only, decades later that I remembered what happened afterwards. So, there's consistency and similarity to that. And it seems as if the sun is really helping us to prepare for these changing times that we are going through. And as it is this activator, we look at the universe. It's been said to say that plasma constitutes 99.9% of the universe, and that it has a self-organizing principle to it. It is intelligent. And it's responsive to our intentions. It's responsive in these electromagnetic fields. And there's quite a few people that have done research on that. And I want some of you to think about the auroras that we've recently had. In last year is when we really started to get those at mid-latitude. So I'm in Massachusetts. That's considered a mid-latitude. And I got auroras out my window. Which was incredible. And so there's a greater connectivity that seems to be happening with the sun to the earth right now. I wonder if some of you can throw in the chat if you were able to see some of those auroras, and even how you felt when you saw the auroras, because there does seem to be, again, a physiological reaction that goes on in our bodies and in our minds, and sometimes with our emotions, and it could charge and trigger something else as well. So there is this greater connectivity that is occurring right now. And we have had a tremendous amount of solar activity. Last year, we had an extremely high amount in comparison to like the last 20 to 25 years. So because of that, things are, the bee's nest is really being kicked up, so to speak, right now. And this is a field that is responsive to us. This is an intelligence that is responsive to us. And I will take a moment to explain a little bit more about that. It's not just the sun flares and then the next thing we're preparing for like a geomagnetic storm. It's not entirely like that for people who are sensitive. There are some people that will feel these flares in real time. Science will tell you, well, no, you can't really feel that. That's not, that's not real. And that's not necessarily what we're seeing with people right now. That greater connectivity, people can feel them in real time. And then you've got people that are able to feel them and sense them prior to those happening. And so one has to ask ourselves, and this is part of the research that I'm doing, is this part of our evolutionary adaptation? Is this part of our evolutionary process to be a co-creator with the sun, to experience the wisdom that's coming in, to experience the information, the intelligence, and to work with that in actually real time? And so I share that as a possibility for us. I know for myself, it's like baked in the cake that this is the path that I seem to be on, and it seems that others are beginning to experience this, and some, who have experienced this previously. And so that piece is important to share. This plasma intelligence, this plasma can act as an intelligent medium. This is something that we need to, really, again, begin to understand and ask ourselves. There's a couple of research papers that go along with this, that looking at during solar flares, during CMEs, there does seem to be a greater increase in orbs, and different orbs that are reacting to these intelligences of the sun. And that is not just, interesting for us, but it makes us ask, well, is this something, again, that we can interact within ourselves? And it certainly seems to be the case. So with sensory triggers, there's something that about 20 years that came in, and the term was electromagnetic neurogenetic. And one of the things that I immediately understood is when the sun begins to really push and flare more and becomes more active, that we will be able to remember things about our ancestral body. We'll also remember things about our spiritual body, our soul, and that information was going to come in. And now we're seeing that people remember things more like their past lives and childhood wounding that they've had in this life. So the sun seems to be this activator for this type of clearing, and that's what I would say. It's a clearing, it's a healing. It doesn't feel so good, like I'll keep sharing, when it comes in for everybody, but it seems to be something that's stimulating this breaking apart in us of something that's no longer serving. And I always hope people are okay, during these times, and can do themselves a favor to not negatively internalize what may be going on, even though sometimes it may not feel so good, but to realize that this is part of this shift. Other people are experiencing this as well. You'll be okay. You may just have to work with this and talk to somebody. And when people can detach a negative story to it, there's a greater opportunity that they can be a co-creator and be more healing in regards to this. And the last thing that I want to say is there's a harmonizing force with the sun. I am a bit of a student of Rudolf Steiner. That's part of my PhD program as well. I thought Steiner was fabulous and did a great job with looking at reincarnation, looking at the cosmological influences impacting and affecting us. And the sun really does seem to be something that helps us to counteract materialism. It helps to elevate our evolution. It allows us to be morally and spiritually aligned when used wisely. And most importantly, this is the piece that I really want to share, is it helps us to connect with the cosmos, but through inner impulses, our own inner impulses, not what we're seeing on the external that says, oh, this is what ET is. Oh, this is what the planetary shift is. It's not external. It's something that's extremely personal. It's extremely individualized. And it's an inner impulse that comes from inside. It's not something that can be scripted from the outside. And that's where I think the indigenous wisdom is so key, that comes through for us, that this is something that is actually very specific for us, and it may not look just like everybody else's. So Jim, I see that you're back, and for time to be what it is, I will be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you. You've taken us to a realm that I don't think most people even think about, that the sun and the plasma energies of the cosmos influence our thinking, our emotions, our behavior, and that the sun flares are actually contributing to our evolutionary development at this time. It's almost like a one big selfica. We're being brought into a vortex of energy, whether we want to or not. And so thank you for bringing that in. I'd like to now bring in both Birdie Jaworski and Kathleen Marden, because we're going to have a conversation about the technologically advanced non-human intelligences that are here, because that's something that is of very deep attention to governments and to people around the world. So, starting with water, and then our communication with upper primates and mammals, to the plants, to Selfica, and now the interconnectivity with the solar system and cosmos. Humanity's waking up to the reality that there's intelligent beings out there, not only from other star systems, but from other dimensions. And so Birdie Jaworski, who joined us yesterday and is a remote viewer, has spoken intelligibly to numerous extraterrestrials. And Kathleen Marden was there at that iconic historic moment when Betty and Barney Hill were abducted. She was a relative, and she has become one of the great researchers into the human ET communication and contact. So we thought we would bring them both in together for a dialogue. And we're going to start with you, Birdie. Just to tell us your experience briefly, because you could talk for hours or days about all the ETs you've been in communication with over time. But just give us a flavor as a remote viewer, as someone whose clairvoyance extends out to those dimensions, how you met your first ET and what you've learned and discussed with them.
I have spoken with literally hundreds of different kinds of ETs over the past 30 years as a remote viewer. And this is literally a skill that every single person on this planet is capable of learning and perfecting. And I've been training students with a focus on communication. And in fact, in January, Jim and I have a class we're going to be hosting at Ubiquity, a 5-day class where I'm literally going to teach you how to communicate with non-human intelligence. We're going to be looking at all kinds of cool things. But some of the more interesting species that I've talked to, I've talked to the classics, the living Roswell alien who is still alive after that iconic crash in 1947. And I had a telepathic communication with this alien where he told me, I'm using he, even though gender is more fluid and more different in their species than it is for us. And they were just on a journey of exploration, and they were brought out of the sky by radar and the storm that was happening. It was just a big kind of a thing. But I learned about their civilization. I've talked to the most ancient civilization in our entire universe. This civilization is still alive. It has been around for billions upon billions upon billions of years, and they have outgrown all of these crazy problems that humanity has. So it's been a great learning experience. But one of the most interesting things that I have learned in speaking to so many different species, and I just call them people when I'm doing this work, because to me, they're just like you and I, way more advanced, perhaps, maybe even more spiritually evolved, maybe more interesting, certainly smarter than me. But one thing I've discovered is that they're really interested in humanity. They have a strong interest in who we are. Many of these species have been watching us over these decades, over millennia. They want to see what we're going to turn out to be. Many of these people are rooting for us on the sidelines. They're hoping we're going to get past this nuclear age, past this kind of infighting amongst ourselves, and then we'll start seeing our all of humanity as something special and connected to consciousness. So it's been a wild ride.
Wow, I can imagine. I want to circle back to what you know about that civilization that's been around for billions of years. in contrast to we humans that have been around for 250,000, maybe 300,000 years. So we'll get to that. But I want to turn to you, Kathleen, because you've studied thousands of experiencers, in the tradition of John Mack, who really pioneered the experiencer phenomenon in his book, Abduction and Passport to the Cosmos. And so share with us, what have you concluded? What's a common denominator as you understand it, given your research on how the experiencer phenomenon, what does it all add up to?
Well, in my 4 research studies that I worked on, many with PhD academics, we were looking for commonalities that experiencers share that are not common among people in the general population. And of course, I came up in the tradition of looking for physical evidence as an investigator. But as most individuals do who have acquired so much evidence that they can no longer deny the possibility that we are in communication with non-humans, probably of extraterrestrial origin, I began to look to the messages that are passed from people who are in physical, non-earthly environments in the presence of non-humans, and also then to look at those who, through an altered state of consciousness, meditation, channeling, or maybe just relaxation, are in communication with non-human intelligence that they cannot see physically. But I know through experiments that I've participated in, we can measure through increases in the temperature around the channeler. For example, through a strong tingling sensation in the bodies of all of those individuals who are present in that kind of environment. So those are some of the things that we did. And what we discovered is that there are certain things that are common in the messages that are imparted from both individuals who are in physical contact and in those with non-physical contact. What we've been able to find is you're much more limited in that physical contact environment. But the messages are pretty much the same. When you have the opportunity to engage in communication with non-human intelligence in a non-physical environment, as far we have very limited visual range, so perhaps they're there and we just can't see them. But the messages are essentially the same, and they're much more, you have much more opportunity to ask questions in the non-physical contact. They are warnings about physical destruction due to our neglect of our earthly environment, warnings about nuclear destruction, the need to increase our level of spiritual maturity and consciousness, technical information given to some individuals, this is not to everybody, and self-help messages.
So they're really here to help.
It appears that way.
And they cover everything from the dangers of nuclear war to how to make yourself feel better. That's quite extraordinary. That's quite a scope. Birdie, would that correspond to your myriad communications with these beings?
Yes, absolutely. Kathleen just outlined kind of the agenda of what many of these species visiting us have. They are truly trying to enlighten, inform, educate us. They want us to join that cosmic community. We're not ready quite there, but we're rapidly approaching, with our technological world a little bit out of control right now with all this research into artificial intelligence and other kinds of new technologies. But we have to keep an open mind as towards our own inner journey, our own consciousness, and make sure that we're not facing outward all the time, but we're also looking inward. And they're looking to encourage that inward development so that we can become fully realized consciousness beings in this cosmos.
Well, one question I want to pose to both of you, which I think is uppermost in almost everybody's mind, is given their extraordinarily advanced technological and intellectual powers, why they're not intervening more directly as our situation continues to worsen. Is it your understanding, Kathleen, starting with you, is some kind of prime directive, like, in Star Trek, that, that there's a kind of a rule in the cosmos that you can't intervene in local species like humans? You've got to somehow keep a distance. I mean, how do you understand the reality that they're all around us, but they remain gossamer?
It's my understanding that there is sort of a prime directive, that they are here to assist in our development. And that means that they will not engage in direct intervention unless we are on the brink of destruction.
Oh, really? So
Yes.
do have that caveat. So if we get really close to a nuclear exchange, your understanding is that they, at that moment, would actually intervene.
That is correct. From the messages that I have examined and received through contact with non-human intelligence.
So that would mean that the fact that there's orbs everywhere and there appears like there's more and more presence of nature, there's more and more presence of the extraterrestrials, that their concern is mounting as we get closer to that point. Would that be your sense, Birdie? Because you're in touch with them like
Yes.
right now, personally, in many levels.
Pretty much every day. Yeah, I sincerely feel this, especially in recent work that I've done on for example, the New Jersey drones and the drones. I've recently done some work on the drones happening over Northern Europe, and then on the Three-Eye Atlas, other kinds of things happening in the world right now. There certainly is an uptick in this activity. More and more people are seeing orbs. They're sending their own consciousness out to call down the orbs. We're seeing this beautiful interaction beginning to build, which we've never seen in all of human history before. We've always had kind of independent contactees or experiencers having their moments, maybe sometimes a mass sighting. But now we have people intentionally going out, using their intention to contact these other beings. And everyone's getting the same messages that, hey, we've made a mess of this planet, at least to a certain degree, and it's our job to fix it up. It's kind of like that old adage, feed a man a fish and he eats for a day, but teach him how to fish and he can eat for a lifetime. And I believe that that's kind of what their prime directive, if you'd like to call it that, is more like, that they're teaching us from the inside out. And it's up to us to take on that teaching and to try to be the most wonderful, beautiful human beings possible as part of our collective Earth existence. We heard from all these incredible people, Veda in her communication with water, Linda and the lions, Gary and the orangutans, everybody. We are all engaging in this beautiful connected consciousness. And I think the more we do this, the more we're going to be able to overcome these big things. But I do think if a big planetary-wide disaster were to happen, we would see intervention.
Well, that's a hopeful note. And then just finally, and very briefly from both of you, because of the limits of time, one of the great debates about disclosure right now is, do we interpret the NHI presence on Earth through the frame of a national security state and see them as a potential threat and arm ourselves and have a fear-based approach, which is what the US government and the military and the intelligence communities are telling us, you know, on a regular basis about the NHI? Or should we be open-hearted and open-minded? And starting with you, Kathleen, my understanding of your research is that 80% or more of all the people who've had contact report it as positive. And so is that correct?
In MUFON's study of 516 experiencers, 71% said that they did not want contact to end. Among those who were in the UFO abductee group, it was 75%. In Free's study, which was a larger study of 3,400, 84% did not want contact to end.
Boy, I would say that would be me, man. If I had the opportunity, you know, take me up to your spaceship immediately. So it's a net positive in terms of your research.
Yes.
Well, this is really important, everyone, for us to bear in mind as we into this phenomenon. And Birdie, finally, would that be your sense?
Yes, the national security narrative is simply a narrative designed to keep us from getting the information that we all have been asking for and that we all want. And I 100%, like through my every part of my existence, I expand way out to the whole universe, folks. So do you. Yeah. But every single part of that fiber of my being and beings beyond time believes that this is just part of our evolutionary process. And it is time for humanity to take that next step and to become part of our greater cosmic community. And it's nothing to be afraid of.
And then just very, very quickly, what did the beings that have been around for billions of years, what did they say? I mean, is there anything that you've gleaned from your communications with them that would be of help to our young species still in diapers, barely able to walk?
Yeah, that's essentially what they told me, Jim, that we are just the very beginning of our journey and that we're at the very first big step. That's what they literally told me. You're about to take this big, huge step into the unknown. Yeah. And this is where everything is going to accelerate. Your knowledge, your understanding, your connection to consciousness, your connection to everything in this entire universe. And the universe is beyond ours. And they believe we're going to make it because they have a way of evaluating different civilizations out there. And they showed me this incredible, all these different civilizations that didn't make it. But they said that we are on the scale. Our scale is tipped toward making it. And that just made me feel so happy. Plus, that civilization has the most beautiful music. I can hear it in my mind's eye, but I could never recreate it. And I'm a musician. The most beautiful music I've ever heard. And it's like they sing all day. They reverberate this frequency that's incredible. So it's magic. We live in such a cool universe, people.
Yeah. We're going to make it, everyone. And they're here to help and will save us from ourselves if necessary. What an extraordinary, uplifting thing to say, both of you. So thank you both so much. Really appreciate this. And
thank you, Kathleen and Jim.
Thank you. In the future. Thank you, everyone. And now we're going to conclude with going to South Africa. And we're going to return from the cosmos and the solar system to the Earth with Saskia van Diest, who's the co-founder of EcoFluency, who's preparing a course for us in our ET Studies program for next year, and really has developed an expertise on how one communicates with ecosystems. So Saskia, tell us about your research in ecosystems.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you so much. And also, firstly, it's so inspiring to hear the other speakers. It's been really amazing. And also, just to clarify, I'm the founder, not co-founder of Ecofluency. It's still currently a one-woman show. Yeah. Just want to check how much time I have so that I can manage myself.
About 10 minutes.
Okay. So I should mention that currently with Ecofluency, I'm communicating with all aspects of nature. I'm communicating with plants, animals, rocks, rivers, ancestors, nature spirits, microbes, extraterrestrials, planets, any aspect of nature. You can imagine it. That's what I do, and that's what I teach people to do as well. And I do consultations with any aspect of nature for people. But this is not something I've always been able to do. I didn't grow up being able to do this, and I had to relearn this through workshops and courses and so on. And because I came from an academic background, I came from a background of agricultural research. So I was doing a PhD in plant pathology. So I was studying agricultural plant diseases. And that workshop, the first animal communication workshop that I ever did, changed my life. Similar to what Linda was describing, I was engaged at the time. I gave up my partner. I gave up everything in my life almost. And so ended up doing 7 years of postdoctoral research. Didn't really want to stay in academia, but did, because what was being asked of me is to investigate how farmers use intuitive communication with nature to inform their practical management decisions. And what I was finding is that farmers have, similar to traditional ecological knowledge in many indigenous cultures worldwide on every continent, farmers have and do and always will be communicate with nature to inform how they co-create food landscapes. And some are aware of the fact that they do this and some aren't. So I had the great pleasure and honor of interviewing some of these farmers and finding out how they were having conversations with fungi, how they were having conversation even with animals who are considered pests or pathogens, how they were communicating with whether it was the mice that were in the sheds they were making cheese, or whether it was with the soil, or whether it was the overarching intelligence or the group soul of the herd of cows that they were raising for dairy. They are able to have these conversations and use that information to inform how they make practical decisions that are more practical, more efficient, more satisfying, and ultimately more beneficial for the entire ecosystem. I'm just aware of the time, and I'm wanting to figure out how best to use this for, like, what is the message that needs sharing rather than what is the message I want to share. I think what feels most important to mention is that I agree with everything that the speakers have shared so far. It feels like maybe what the missing piece is that our role as humans is to be communicators, is to be able to affect change in ways that other species cannot. This is what makes us a keystone species. We're able to use these opposable thumbs and our songs, like, for example, when Selene sang, so beautiful. This invokes the spirits of the landscape, for example. It crosses boundaries that normal speech isn't able to often. We have these bodies that can dance. We can make fire, or we can call fire into being. We can do ritual and ceremony, and we can move things in the landscape to bring about changes that other species cannot. But of course, it really helps to know how to ask and how to listen to what it is that landscapes and ecosystems need. And this is where nature communication becomes, like what Veda was saying, a voice for the voiceless. Because without knowing what it is that plants and animals and mountains, for example, oceans want, how are we going to just use modern Western science to bring about solutions that are going to address the issues that we currently face? it cannot be done using the logic, using the consciousness as the same consciousness that created those problems in the first place. So by communicating with nature, we are able to tap into a vast wisdom and intelligence and power that is not available to our everyday human minds. And of course, I'm speaking to the converted here already. But what I also want to share, which I haven't yet heard, is how doing that is not just beneficial for humans and the ecosystems on a physical level, but evolutionary wise, spiritually, this is what the plants has specifically have taught me. And I work with trees a lot, and I make tree essences, spirit essences, and working with the trees in that way, and through direct communication, I have learned that in the same way that any relationship is a crucible, it's a way of offering that tension that allows for growth. You know, it's almost like when two egos find friction with each other, there's an opportunity for conversation, for trust, for growth, if both parties come to the table in that way. So when we are communicating, whether it's with plants, whether it's with animals, whether it's with any aspect of nature, it gives them the opportunity to also evolve. So this is how human, more than human natural intelligence, cosmic or extraterrestrial intelligence can be working together, is through this, and be all co-evolving, is through communication, is through keeping relationship at the forefront and doing that with humility. So what else needs saying within the space of time?
Saskia, I think the point that you just made is a good final point. And I want you to amplify it, because I think this is the actual container for the whole session, that we are communicators.
Yeah.
And when the whole communicates multilaterally with itself, that's when all aspects prosper. So that's the bottom line, everybody, what Saskia just said. So whether it's water, whether it's white lions, whether it's the sun, whether it's the ETs, the orangutans, the plants, it's the capacity for us humans in some ways to be at the hub of the cosmic wheel at this moment on Earth, since we're the apex species on Earth, that's going to give us the possibility of working with these intelligences in a holistic way. Does that express what your essential mission is?
Absolutely. What I want to add to that is to say that as we regenerate, as we nourish ecosystems, bring about ecosystem restoration, by doing that in co-creation with nature, and by bringing the voices of the more than human nature to the table as stakeholders in that decision-making process, that is what's going to accelerate the process in a way that is more efficient, is more practical, is more supportive of greater harmony, of greater evolution for all aspects. And like was already been mentioned, every single one of us can do this. This is our birthright. This is something that is a matter of being reclaimed, relearned. And by doing that, we become not just ecosystem engineers, but biodiversity artists. This is where we raise.
Say that again. Ecosystem engineers and biodiversity artists.
If we reclaim the skill, if we're regaining our place as keystone species in right relationship with the more than human, we're not just ecosystem engineers that treats nature as mechanistic. We're bringing in the spiritual, we're bringing in the creativity, and then we can become biodiversity artists. And that means farming the landscape outside as well as within. So we're nourishing this inner landscape, we're learning from the inner landscape, and we're evolving at the same time as what we're finding on the outside. You know, it's increasing, like Rudolf Steiner's was mentioned, I think, by Susan. And he was talking about how the fertility of the mind is what was lacking. When he was sharing his knowledge, he had to get into agriculture so that he could stimulate how soil fertility would be affecting the food that would be grown. And the food then affects our bodies and our mind. So it was increasing the vitality and the fertility on all levels. So we're bringing our full selves to the table. And in doing so, we're able to listen with our full bodies. We can activate this entire listening instrument and bring our full self to not just be loved by nature, but to love nature and to co-evolve in that way, reclaim our role as dancers in this universe. And singers. And that's really what the nature spirits, every time I have chats with them, they're always like, when's the next song? When's the next party? They love a party. They love a ceremony. They love a ritual. Like sing, drum, dance. That's what they want. Do it around a fire. Do it in circle. But do it with heart, always.
Yeah.
Do it even if you're not sure how it's meant to look. Do it. Do the thing.
Fantastic. You know, what you're saying reminds me of the great insight of Pythagoras, who coined the term cosmos. Pythagoras was one of those avatars who could sit so silently that he could hear the song of the planets, Jupiter, Saturn. And he realized and coined the term cosmos, which means ornament, because he says the whole thing is one great song.
Yeah.
Which all of us have our parts to sing. So thank you for bringing that in. That's a brilliant way to bring our session to a close, everyone. Thank you, Saskia. Thank you very, very, very much. And now, everyone, we want to bring our session here to a close with art. First, some poetry by Robert Arnold, who is our poet laureate for the State of the World Forum. Each year, between 1995 to 2000, we had a poet laureate, and Robert is the one for this year. So thank you, Robert. And then this is going to be followed by a recording from Emily Bledsoe Holloway, who will bring music to bring us to a close. But first, Robert Arnold. Robert?
Thanks, Jim. Today I want to read something on discovering our place in the world. If the first movement of this journey named the wound, then this begins by touching what still heals. Long before human beings learned to measure the world, they learned to belong to it. Long before we named ourselves masters, we knew ourselves as participants. Life was not something happening around us, it was something happening through us. Breath was borrowed, water was shared, death was not exile but return. This understanding did not belong to one culture or continent. It emerged wherever humans lived long enough in one place to listen. Across time and geography, people arrived at the same quiet conclusion. Life is not organized as a hierarchy, but woven as a fabric. No strand stands alone. No being exists without obligation to the others. Among many indigenous North American nations, the phrase, all my relations, is not poetry. It's philosophy. It names an ontological truth that humans are bound to animals, plants, rivers, ancestors, and the unborn by reciprocal responsibility. Identity is not individual possession. It is relational inheritance. To act as if one were separate was not merely foolish, it was dangerous. In Indian cosmology, Pachamama is not an abstract Mother Earth figure, but a living presence that sustains and responds. Offerings are not superstition, they are acknowledgments of debt. To take without giving back is not immoral because a rule was broken. It is destabilizing because a relationship was violated. Balance is not idealism, it's survival. The Maori thought Waka Paka binds human identity to land and lineage simultaneously. Mountains and rivers are ancestors. They're not resources to be consumed, but elders to be honored. And when the river was granted legal personhood, it was not a modern invention. It was a legal system catching up to an ancient truth. Aboriginal Australian spirituality understands that land not as backdrop, but as memory itself. The dreaming is not mythic past. The crisis of our time is not simply environmental, it is relational. We live as if we were separate, and the body knows we were not. Anxiety rises when systems feel incoherent. Depression changes. Indigenous grief rituals recognize that loss must be shared or it becomes poison. Modern society privatizes grief and then wonders why despair metastasizes. We mourn species we've never touched, and we grieve futures we can't name, and we feel complicit without agency. Art once carried this weight, story once taught consequence. Ritual once slowed time enough for reflection. Music once synchronized our hearts. Those were our not luxuries, those were technologies of coherence. We replaced them with speed, and yet the hunger remains. People still fall silent before mountains. They still weep at funerals for strangers and still feel something ancient stir at firelight and running water. Nature continues to mirror us without judgment. It responds honestly. Care produces abundance. Violence produces collapse. This is not mysticism. It's a pattern recognition. What we destroy outside ourselves, we destroy within. When soil erodes, cultures fracture. When water is poisoned, trust dissolves. When forests fall, imagination thins. The path forward does not require belief in a particular cosmology. It requires humility. Stewardship is not moral superiority. It's restraint informed by relationship. Reciprocity is not charity. It is memory enacted. Spirituality at its best has always been the language we use to remind ourselves that life is fragile and therefore it is sacred. And not sacred because it is bestowed from above, but because it is shared. This remembering does not demand we live as our ancestors did. It demands that we remember what they knew, that life is not a ladder to climb. It is a fabric to tend, and every time we mend one strand, something inside us begins to heal as well. We were never meant to be spectators standing behind glass, watching the world breathe without us. We were made of the same old agreements as river and root, as soil and song, as hands that knew the weight of seeds before they knew the weight of clocks. There was a time when meaning was not something you searched for, but something you belonged to. It lived in the way morning came without permission and left without apology. It lived in the fire. It did not ask what you were before it warmed you. The elders knew this, the ones who spoke to mountains without needing answers back, the ones who thanked the animal before the knife and thanked the rain before the harvest. They knew the world was not a resource but a relative, and we've forgotten. We've traded listening for measuring, presence for productivity, and called it progress. We named ourselves owners of things that were never ours, wondered why our souls began to ache. But listen, the sacred has not left us. It is patient. It waits beneath asphalt inside creeks that still remember their own names. It waits in your chest when you grow quiet enough to hear the old rhythm tapping back. You are not broken because you feel lost. You are remembering that you belong to something larger and that the noise you were sold, meaning is not found in conquering the earth, but in kneeling beside it and realizing that it has been holding you the whole time. The work now is not escape, but return, not invention, but recognition, to touch the ground like it is listening, to speak to one another as if we were still all kin, to live as our breath and the wind and part of the same long sentence. You are not too late. The thread has not snapped. The sacred fabric is still being woven every time you choose care over speed, connection over conquest, wonder over control, and step back into it. Let it remember you. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name's Emily, and you probably know me as Chris Bledsoe's daughter, and I can tell you that growing up in the Bledsoe household was definitely not normal. I've been experiencing spiritual and paranormal phenomenon since I was 10 years old, and I can say without a doubt that it is based in consciousness. At a very early age, I found my refuge in music and decided to pursue it professionally, to make a name for myself in music and kind of get away from under my family and do my own thing, only to find out the higher I got in my understanding and training as a musician, the more I understood that music is consciousness. It is the phenomenon. It is spiritual. And I ended up right where I started. It all started coming together for me when I went to the Monroe Institute in 2022 and was exploring consciousness through deep meditation with their sound science. Through that experience, I not only unearthed more of myself and healed parts of myself, but I I tapped into a greater well of creativity through consciousness, which is infinite. From this, for the first time in my life, I started writing music, and I wrote my first album in less than 6 months. While this music is technically about my life and it's about my journey, my experiences with the phenomenon, also through the lens of synesthesia. For me, music and emotion appear as color, as density, texture. So all of these songs came to me as these very intense visual and emotional impressions that I worked with to sort of, in partnership, bring these songs out into reality. And consciousness is so funny. It can come in really strange ways. So for my song Radio that you're going to hear today, it appeared to me for the first time as a cardinal, a red bird that my intuition said, this is a song you need to connect with. And the more I connected with this cardinal, the more I started to see these impressions and hear this music that came out almost instantly. And it's so perfect for the State of the World Forum because it's about letting go and tapping into love and expanding outwards beyond ourselves, beyond our human limitations, and tapping into something much greater than ourselves. We all have that potential, and this song is so special to me. It's an absolute pleasure to share my music. I hope you enjoy radio that's enhanced with Monroe sound science, the stuff that helped me on my own journey and unlocked all of this for me. It's tailored to help you expand and to integrate your own beautiful journey as well. I hope you enjoy radio. You said that time is like a box of marbles, and each moment of your life is a different marble in the box. Sometimes the box gets shifted and shaken up and all of the marbles jumble around, and sometimes that explains why it seems like the future can affect the past. But the funny thing about this box is there are infinite boxes. There's more to you than you know. Some troubles I'm working through, but why give up the good I'm meant to do? No matter the reason, I will keep dancing. The past